All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this panel session. Just a brief explanation for the session. It's a Q&A with our RIM system providers. So this panel includes organizations which represent services and products that support expert profiling and research information management systems. They span proprietary and open source communities, including platforms and data services supporting turnkey and hybrid solutions. We have 6 questions we've prepared for the panel today, which they've had an opportunity to review in advance. We'll spend roughly 10 minutes on each question, giving each panelist an opportunity to weigh in and comment. My colleague and I will be monitoring the time for our speakers, and we'll be monitoring the time spent on each question. Brian will raise a finger to indicate to the speakers to complete their thought so we can move on to the next speaker or the next question. At the end, this will leave us roughly a brief 10-minute period for audience Q&A. If you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A tab on your Remo display. We'll do our best to answer all the questions presented, but we'll also pass on questions to the panelists after the event as well. So without further ado, let's introduce ourselves. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Just quickly, yes, I'm Brian Cooper, Associate Dean for Engagement and Innovation in the Libraries at Florida International University, the public research university in Miami, Florida. And I'm also PI for Scholars at FIU at scholars.fiu.edu. Along with Dave's comments, I want to express thanks to the Conference Steering Committee for reviewing the questions for the panelists and let the audience know that all panelists have received these questions in advance of this session. And we ask that the panelists, as Dave mentioned, to keep the responses at maximum to 2 minutes for each question in an effort to get through all questions and in respect to the time of the other panelists. If a 2-minute limit is reached, I'll raise my finger as a signal to the speaker that his or her time is up. Thank you.
All right, and my name is Dave Shear. I'm the Scholarly Communications and Research Curation Librarian at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm also the operational lead for our Symplectic Elements Research Information Management System operations. And we're in the process of rolling out to campus right now. So without further ado, I'm going to now introduce our panelists. Speaking today, we have a group of experts, and I'll begin by introducing Ann Beynon, Global Manager of Sales and Customer Success Training with the Science Group at Clarivate. Jonathan Breeze, the Symplectic CEO with Digital Science. Nadav Doran, VP for Research Solutions with the Ex Libris Group. Davina Erasmus, Director of Product Management for Pure with Elsevier. And Julia Tremor, the former Director of Faculty Systems and Analysis at Duke University and a Vivo board member. So now I'm going to transition from displaying my screen. Welcome, everyone, and now we'll begin. So it's my pleasure to ask our panelists the first question, which is, what terminology do you use to define your system? What makes it unique? And please, anyone can begin.
Jonathan, you're muted, Jonathan.
I am. I just laughed. I thought, who's going to volunteer? So as I've been outed for the fact my mic wasn't on. So hello, I'm Jonathan Breeze and part of the Symplectic team. So Symplectic, I know we're a panel of vendors, but we're a software development team. We develop software. We want to deliver quality software and a quality level of service. And we've been doing the things that we've been doing for 12 or more years. Our product's been around for that period of time, and we grew from a UK-based company to now an international company. So we now have 130 plus organizations use our product. Some of those clients have been with us for a dozen or more years. And the terminology that we use reflects how we've changed and how we've grown in that time. So originally we were a publication management tool. We helped capture and automate the capture of publication data on behalf of major research institutions. That's always felt like research information. So we we're well aligned to referring to Elements as a research information system or research information management system. Research can sound a little bit exclusive. So even though there is the RIM acronym, which is also a bit awkward to even talk about, we also use the phrase scholarly information because we also have teaching data and teaching activity supervision inside our system. And more recently, we're just simplifying a bit further, and we refer to our system as a research management system or profile management system, where it resonates with who we're speaking to. And yeah, that's in terms of terminology. I don't know if anyone else has any other different phrases or acronyms that they want to make use of, but it's definitely changed over time.
Yeah, so if I may add, hello, my name is Nadav Doron, I'm from Ex Libris. So for those of you who don't know Ex Libris, we're working in the research industry for many years, almost 30 years, focusing on libraries. And more recently, we moved into the other part of the research as well. And yeah, like Jonathan, like you said, there are many terms here and actually many use cases that can be answered with these kind of systems, and it can be confusing. So what we're trying to do is to look at a use case that we are solving, and try to help with that, whether it's Expert Finder or CRIS system or RIM system. I would say that for us as Plurl, the product, we are kind of a RIM system that answers the needs of expert finders, users, repositories, CRIS, maybe RDM to an extent.
Yeah, and if I may add, so hi, Ann Bynan from Clarivate. I think we're all in that same space of using many terms. We're kind of unique in that we have a variety of tools that we offer. So we do have a traditional, what we call CRIS system or RIM system, or whatever you'd like to call it, called Converis. But also, when we do public research portals using Vivo, which is an open source software, we tend to use that term research portal or researcher profiling system, just because it seems to resonate more, with the market. And just to explain a little bit, if you didn't attend any of the other sessions we did, we are a certified partner with Vivo, so with the Lyrasis program. And, so I'll be talking about both of those sort of systems today because they both play a part, both Converis and Vivo, for different reasons. But also we're a data provider. So, you probably know us from Web of Science, which is a very, well-known and trusted source of publication metadata and citation data. So some institutions just want to use our data in their system, whether it's one of these other commercial ones or a homegrown one. So as part of the ecosystem, there's also this data sharing component. And we have partnerships with other vendors to use our data and vice versa. So there's really no one size fits all model, I would say. But what makes us unique, which was part of the question, is the value of that data. So it is very well-known, well-trusted for a variety of reasons. So we use that, we use the Web of Science data, of course, in Converis and in Vivo, or again, as a standalone, if that suits your needs. But Vivo, and I know Julia will talk about Vivo as well, one of the big benefits of using Vivo as the research portal is it's open source. So it doesn't have a license fee. There's no software fee for that particular software. And we provide the services to set it up. Thanks.
Well, so maybe I can add to that. So I'm Davina Erasmus from Pure. Well, apart from everything else everyone's already said, because the great thing about going towards the end is that everyone's already said everything. But I think the one term I'd add to this, or the two terms I'd add to the discussion is something that's been talked about a bit recently for us anyway, is reputation management. So being able to pick up on for the institution, for the departments, for the researchers, being able to put out your image and make sure that your reputation is being managed and maintained in the public space. And next to that, we've also been having a lot of conversations around this collaboration platform idea. So, having a place to be able to invite collaboration, to facilitate collaboration, and then also being able to work with that collaboration further as well. So taking that into what makes us unique, it's really hard to be unique if you think about it, because all these conversations, there's so many things that all of us do very similarly. But I think one of the things that we like to say is that we focus on the complete picture, because we try to pick up all the parts of the research content. So we talk about the researchers, the research output, the organizational units, but we also talk about things like prizes, press media, awards, awarded grants, those kinds of things as well. And we try to make sure that the picture that you can put out there is complete as we can help you to get it to be. And so that's one of the things that we think our focus on makes us a little bit different in terms of product. But also, we have a standard data model that we work with. We don't use different models for different customers. And what's important for us there is that it helps our customers to standardize the data, and also to be able to cumulatively build data up as well. So, we have this notion of starting with whatever you have and building it up from different sources and making sure that you get to a complete set of content and a complete record as well over time. So there's pieces like that I think make a lot of sense in how we work as well.
Okay, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I think I turned my mic on and off about 4 times. So anyway, I am with Vivo, and as you already heard from Anne, Vivo's open source, and it can be many things. Primarily, it's we call it a research discovery tool based on researcher profiles. And Vivo's core technologies really make it unique. Vivo has an ontology, which is like an implicit data map that also defines relationships between data elements. And so the ontologies kind of standardize the data, and that makes the data easier to share and reuse. At its core, Vivo is built on an ontology editor, so users can extend the data model for their own purposes. And Vivo comes with multiple interfaces for getting data out and sharing it. Its data structure, without getting into the weeds too much, is machine readable. So if you have Vivo data stored somewhere, ostensibly another computer can access it and pull the data out and use it. And I do work with Anne Bynan very closely. So Anne, if you have anything else you want to jump in and add here.
There's another question where it'll come up, so I think we can bring it up then. But thanks.
Move on. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the second question then. And this is a 2-part question. What are the challenges or areas of improvement for your system? And what do you consider the strengths of your system? Yeah, maybe somebody else can start besides Jonathan this time.
I'm already unmuted, so I will, I'll go and kick it off. So again, we have Converys, our CRIS system. We have Vivo, the research portal. So Converys, I think, one of the big strengths is configurability. So with systems like this, you can never have everything built in, right? So, we make our system very configurable and allow it to adapt and connect to a variety of other data sources. And then we also have this easy connection between Converys and Vivo if someone wants both the internal sort of research management aspect and validation, and then the external portal. But I will say, one of the challenges is trying to prioritize what to do as far as development. I know there's another question about that, so I won't talk too much about that. But of course, institutions globally do have different priorities. So we can try to give them the power, to configure the system as much as possible. But we also have to think about things that have to be built in to the software. And for Vivo, we are one of the few service providers that's certified, for Vivo. And again, what's unique, I mean, Julia, just builds on what you were just saying, the fact that it's open source, the fact that it has the data model and the ontology that's been curated by the community, that's become a standard and allows that interoperability of data is a really attractive point. But also, again, I'll just say that being an open source software, not having a license fee and allowing the community then to drive the development of it and contribute to it as much as they want also allows people to have a say in where the Vivo development goes. So I think that's a really important part that gives Vivo strength. It also can be a challenge because with open source, of course, it's only as good as the commitment and the participation of the community. So it can kind of go both ways.
Maybe I'll just jump in there. So I think from our point of view, some of the main challenges or improvement areas we see are around getting researchers to become a part of the effort to gather data and make sure the data is high quality and is complete. That's always a difficult area, I think, is ensuring that researchers don't completely see this as just a burden and also find it is important to make sure that their profiles are up to date and have all the information in it that they need to have in there as part of just, putting themselves out there and being found. And then the second thing I want to say there is that we look a lot at and we try to work very much on building tooling for automatic import of data, but, tooling to be able to get to the highest quality records to ensure that you're bringing in only high quality data, ensuring that everything is actually, geared towards setting up content that customers can just trust and work with directly is always a challenge. It's hard to ensure that you get good data that you can just trust and just blindly put out onto your portals and put out there to represent yourself as far as the whole discussion around reputation management goes as well. So those are two big challenges we see. On the strength side, I think the idea that we focus on the full picture. I've mentioned before in a previous presentation as well that we have this notion of connected content. So making sure that all the content in Pure is connected to each other. And that means that you can look at the content from different lenses, whether you're looking at it through the portal or the web service or any other piece. And I think that's one of our strengths. The fact that we're an open system, because we are extremely open, we have a number of APIs in and out of Pure. We have lots of ways to get things in and out. And that's also really important to us, is that customers can get to the content that they're putting in there and use their content however they want to. And then just on this topic of being able to, standardize what you're looking at and also make sure that you can easily connect data to each other. We have the fingerprinting technology that we use where we have basically a managed taxonomy that is used to, be able to relate content to each other and make sure that all the content, the different types of content are also easily relatable.
So for me, key challenges are there's different types. I think there's the maintenance and upkeep of the system that we've built, which is sometimes a bit hidden from our institutional clients. So things like maintenance of our integrations with our external systems, when external systems change their APIs, when data changes, we need to be able to keep up with that. So that's a challenge that we sort of take on and is a bit hidden from our clients. I think there are more. We definitely have more feature requests than we have staff. I know that. So when you serve a large number of organizations who are using our products because of its flexibility, because of the different use cases of our products, they interpret our products slightly differently. And so it's not just being able to introduce a new feature, it's about having a dialogue with one client and then bringing in other institutions and organizations so that we can build up a bit of a consensus as to where it's sensible for us to spend our time. We put a lot of energy into high quality product design, user experience, and we want our product to be used. So having that engagement with our community is really, really important. But then it becomes a challenge because it's not a client says, I want to customize your product. it requires a bit more of a discussion and engagement with a large number of bodies, and that's definitely a challenge. I think in terms of our strengths, I don't know if it's unique because we all have APIs, we all have different integrations, but we have bi-directional integrations with different repository platforms. That means data can go into a repository or it can go into Elements, and the data flows both ways. We have a large number of external databases we integrate with, and we're not just bringing in the data, we're bringing in the data and making it sort of meaningful. And we bring in data of multiple representations of the same data from different sources. So that's definitely a challenge, but then a strength. And I think another sort of double-edged sword, or a strength and a challenge in the same breath, is the flexibility of our tool. It is
Jonathan,
possible.
you're at the limit. Sorry.
I beg your pardon. You went short on the first one, but fair enough. But by all means, someone else cut me up and get speaking.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks, Jonathan. I'll continue. I think I need to agree with Davina and Jonathan about the challenges. Looking at the engagement with the researchers and make them claim their profile, understand that they have it, use it. I think this is something that we face as well. And also, of course, our customers want many features to be developed. So the prioritization, which we will talk about later in consecutive questions. I want to do mention some of the strengths that we have. So Esploro is a product that comes with, it's one product that have the researcher profiles, the research portal for discovery, and the repository itself, all in one system. And it gets all the information from our own central discovery index hosted by Exlibris, which has more than 4 billion records, not all of them research, not all of them, of course, publication, but it includes a lot of publication, book chapters, conference proceeding datasets, patents, media mentions, etc. We use this, and we use this with the machine learning algorithm to match these into the researchers to update automatically their profiles. So when a researcher publishes something, it gets into our discovery index, then it will get automatically into Esploro. This is one of the key strengths that we have. Another strength is our integration with the funding opportunity solution, which you may know as Pivot or Pivot RP. And the awarded grant capabilities that gets automatically updated into the researcher profiles as well. So we can help researchers also find opportunities, funding opportunities, but also have in their profiles what awarded grants they had already. And of course, the openness, as Jonathan said. I'll talk about it later, but Exlibris this is one of our key strengths, the openness. So this is our third one. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadav. So Vivo, when you talk about Vivo, you always hear about or you will from me, it's adaptability and flexibility, which is also a negative because it can make it really harder to pin down what Vivo really is and get the messaging out to the public. As Anne mentioned, being member supported limits our development budget. So we're dependent on volunteers to add new features to Vivo, and they do, but the development is slower. It's we release 1 or 2 new versions a year rather than every month. Vivo is a big platform. It's complex. It's difficult. It's takes quite a lot of development effort to implement in a big way. We're working on that. We know that we need to simplify the installation process and development process. But there are so many strengths of the Vivo platform. For me, being open source is so huge because the development team can be really responsive to users who are asking for new features and who find problems. So At Duke, many of the faculty members are not shy when they find something that's broken. And it's nice to be able to address those really quickly. So that's definitely a strength, I think, of open source. And a big strength is just the knowledge of the community. We help each other. We often talk to each other's leadership or developers about things we're doing. We give the good news and the bad news about Vivo. And we talk about, okay, we talk about all that stuff. Thank you.
All right. So our third question is about making contact. So when you reach out and make contact with an institution or an organization, what unit is your primary target audience and why? Is it the provost or research office, the libraries, or a COO or CIO, or another part of an organization or institution? And Julia, actually, I'll, if you don't mind, I'll go to you and see if you can answer first.
Sure. Well, we don't do any cold calls. We respond to people who contact us, basically, and people from any of these offices will reach out to any of us on the Vivo in the Vivo community. We do contact people who attend events like the Vivo conference or user groups, or who post questions on the mailing list or on Slack. Our leadership group has members with a range of backgrounds. So we can ask leaders also to step in and help out with folks, with other research backgrounds or faculty or developers, librarians, even people with, CIO level experience. They can just talk directly. Our users are really talk to each other in their own languages and vernaculars. We have an annual German Vivo workshop that's really well attended, and we're putting together a Spanish-speaking user group as well. So we just talk to each other. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd echo what Julia says. I mean, we actually don't do cold calling either, I don't think. We get a lot of inquiries from, and we're very lucky, we get a lot of inquiries either from colleagues or members from our client base who have moved from one organization to another. So they reach out to us, or they've had a recommendation, or they've done some Googling and we're on the list of suppliers to possibly reach out to. They tend to be in response to someone asking for a system that seems a bit like ours. Or they'll attend an event like this and say, oh, I quite like what an institution is doing. And then there is someone who's doing desk-based research at an institution side, approaching different software suppliers as to what their system does, how much does it cost. They normally enter a one-liner on our website saying how much, rather than what they're actually looking for and what their use cases are. And that starts a discussion, and then inevitably we end up talking to all of the above. So definitely members from library teams, the research office, Office of Sponsored Research, IT, communications divisions. When I was at my former employer, one of our biggest challenges was who owns the Element system. It is an institutional system, and there isn't a single owner. It's not owned by HR, owned by finance. It really does represent the whole breadth of activity within an organization. So really all of the above is the answer in terms of who we are, our target audience. And typically we then focus on different use cases. So it's definitely the CIO, the provost will like our dashboards and like our visualizations. But librarians will want to know whether we, support different date formats, and when we can capture multiple representations of the same output. So, yeah, lots of variety. That's why we do what we do, because it's really interesting and really challenging.
And I think what I would add to that, I mean, I think we all agree it is all of the above, right? Because these systems touch so many groups at an institution, whether it's a university or a government agency or a nonprofit or whatever it is. But one thing I've learned over the years working in this space is it really does need the blessing of someone fairly high up, to be successful. So I think, like, if you're talking about a university, you mentioned the provost office. I think having at least some support at that level is really key to making these things sticky and successful, in the long term. But as far as, who actually kind of runs it or owns it, usually I think it is a combination of research office and library. I think the library does play a very critical role. And I'm speaking here both from the sort of Converis and Vivo perspective. It doesn't matter if you're doing the internal work or the public facing portal. We've heard some presentations throughout this conference about how the library has a very important role and expertise because they understand the data and the systems and can really, support these types of systems and make them successful. So just wanted to put a plug in for that. But definitely the interest can come from, I think, a variety of places. And we see that with Vivo that, I'm on the leadership group and, some of the leadership group are in the library. Some of them are in administrative offices. So it's definitely not always, one place that kind of is the leader. It depends on the institution.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think exactly what you were saying, Jonathan. It's the same for us. We don't do much cold calling at all. Most often we're just getting pinged about something from a specific group. It's all the groups, and it's really about who's carrying the use case and what use case is up right now. Sometimes we have conversations around collaboration that are coming from the research administration office that's being tasked to perform against strategy targets that have been set. And sometimes it's coming from the provost who's saying that I have a vision of, improving or increasing the amount of collaboration we're doing across faculties and things like that. So there's a wide variety there. And sometimes you get contacted even by the CIO of an institution because they're looking to kind of consolidate all the requests they're getting across different areas and trying to find a way to pull that together in one tool. So it really does depend. And in that case, it's really just about making sure that the use cases are fitting what we do, right? And the scope of content that we work with.
Yes, I agree. It's a matter of the use case that the university is interested in. Maybe from time to time, there are specific strategic initiatives that are run in the university. It can be run by the research office or in the provost office. And according to that, we will speak with or interact with the right person. And I think that my colleagues here gave all the titles, whether it's the VPRs or someone else in the research office, the provost, the library dean or the AUL. They all can be part of this discussion according to the interesting and relevant use case. I think that combining them all together eventually gets to the provost.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my alarm is going off, and I think it's great that sometimes there can be a little bit of dialogue back and forth or responses, and if somebody cedes some of their time, I think it's great that somebody else can make a brief comment if it adds to the conversation. In terms of the fourth question, and we're moving along just reminding listeners that if they want to submit a question, I think we've got one so far, that we will get to those at the end of our questions, and we should have time for that. Question number 4, how does your organization support utilizing data and services from more than one vendor or source?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start this time. With Ex-Libris, one of our major main philosophy pillars is to be a very open system. So we have a wide variety of APIs, all documented and up for grabs in our website and the developer network, what we call the developer network or the knowledge center. So we really open our system for our customers to use it, to inject data or to consume data from from the system. We also created now a new apps widget that will really that allows our customers to really consume data and share how they do that with other customers, which is very convenient and start to get in a lot of traction. I think another thing that is important is that, like Jonathan said before, we are looking at a bidirectional sync. So, for example, now we're working with ORCID in order to get data, but also up the data back into ORCID, so anyone can benefit from it. The last part of it is that our schema is, of course, it's open, so anyone can see that. It's very flexible. We have announced it. It's based on standards, so customers can use it. But also with that, we can get information to and from the system. That's it.
I would say it's a very similar answer for us in terms of being open regarding the different integrations we do. We have more than 40 integrations with import sources, but also with tools, because what we've seen as well is that it's not just about being able to integrate with import sources. It's about being able to interact sometimes with other systems as well, especially when you're talking about things like the funding workflows, or there's other processes that run alongside where actually the main content is that we're working with. There's need to also bring the other content in, but also to interact with those systems. So there's a lot of those kinds of integrations going on as well. The one thing I would say, and it was interesting because we had this conversation previously as well, is just that all the data in the system is customer owned. And so it really turns to the customer in terms of where do you have data that you want to be bringing in, or which systems do you want to be bringing data in from? And we take a look at that. We build as many as we can in for customers, but we can't build everything in. As has been mentioned before, once you start an integration, you start having to maintain it as well, and so that is a huge load. So we can't be building everything, but we do provide APIs and all kinds of mechanisms for our customers to do things that they need to do. And we see that there's an incredibly lively conversation in our communities around systems that our customers are integrating with themselves, and sharing then of ideas and code and things like that amongst themselves to be able to do this as well. But indeed, if there is a request, we do take a look at it. We pick up on the most highly voted ones as well. We look for systems that are, especially when we come to import sources that are across the different entities that we're looking at as well. So not just research outputs, but we're looking for any other sources for the other types of content as well. And it's really just a question of looking at quality and also trying to provide tooling to help our customers bring the right quality data in. And if it's not of a very high quality, can we give them tools to manage that as well?
And maybe I could build off of, I think one point is that, really starts with what Davina said, like, what does the customer want? What does the client want? And, everyone has slightly different needs when it comes to the kind of data or tools. We at Clarivate, as both a data provider and a system provider, of course, we use our own in-house data as much as possible with Web of Science and related data. But for publications, we use PubMed, we use Scopus. You kind of have to be agnostic with these systems. And we partner then, with the other vendors who use our data, we use their data. So I think that's really important because at the end of the day, we have to meet the customer's needs and we have to give them the most comprehensive solution. So, of course, there's, public sources as well that come into the picture, like clinicaltrials.gov, let's say, for clinical trials, Federal Reporter for grants. There's any number of things. And I think, we're all kind of leveraging, what is possible. ORCID was brought up. ORCID's very important. We all know that, and growing in importance. So I think, trying to look at what's being used and what has the most benefit, whether it's for the portal or for internal, is really the key.
So I looked at our support desk, before we joined the call. There are 128 data sources which are listed as possible feature requests within the Symplectic portal. We're not going to add all 128. Like the other panelists, our system was designed around bringing in data from multiple external systems, blending it with internal systems, and also we've had APIs for that data to then flow into other systems. And we see that increasingly the case. So data will come in, it will be enriched, it will then move on. And our ORCID integration now includes the push of data from an Element system to ORCID. So most, a logical explanation is data curated in a client system in an Element system with the researcher's blessing and authority will update their ORCID record that then could flow into another system. And I think it's about the flow of data. That brings in one of the challenges around sort of what should flow, what privacy concerns, what type of data is being captured. But I think in the time that I've been working with Symplectic and my prior role, I think it's changed from can you get data from these proprietary systems into the system. It's more about the flow of data through this system into others to the benefit of others. And unlike the other panelists, different types of data, not just about publication data. So we're now bringing in patent data from one of our data sources. Sounds absolutely awesome as a concept, sounds straightforward, but actually patent data and the data source isn't structured in exactly the same way as publication databases, doesn't have all the affiliation data that we really rely on, doesn't have person identifiers. There's a lot of effort and work that goes into making sure that we can integrate with different systems. And as Davina said, it's the client that controls the data. It's their data as to what they're allowed to bring in, what they may be licensed to bring in, and then what can then flow into their other internal systems and then other external systems. There's a lot of data out there to be collected, tidied, passed on.
Oh, Julie, you're muted.
Okay. So how does Vivo support using data and services from other systems? Well, really, our users take care of that for us. Vivo's platform agnostic. It has been adapted by users to work with multiple other systems, and that's really one of the strengths of Vivo because universities have faculty data in so many different systems. They may have multiple kinds of the same system, multiple reporting systems, multiple expert, finder systems. HR data is in some big SAP or Banner. They might use Pure, or they might use a kind of system for faculty profiles. They could use or Interfolio for reporting. The library probably has multiple bibliographic databases. At Duke, we have used both Pure and Elements data in our Vivo, which is called Scholars at Duke. And Scholars provides a lot of data to many and other local systems. So different components of Vivo can be
I think we may have lost Julie there. Anybody else like to comment in as well? Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and move on then to the next question. If Julia comes back, we will allow her to finish what she was saying. So with our next question here is about the global communities that you've all have spoken to so far. So how does the development and strategic focus of your systems change based on the needs of your global communities? I know some of you have already mentioned a little bit with the number of feature requests that you have. So I'm curious, how can you please everyone?
Not easily. So it's probably the honest answer. So I've at the risk of sounding like someone who's just really old and been doing this for a very long time, I've definitely seen how different communities, which are actually geographically different, but also the way that they're incentivized is different, and I can see that there being a bit more of a fusion. And I think we've been not just we, Symplectic Digital Science, but we, the software suppliers, we've done a bit of cross-pollination of approaches by the fact that we've got a global outlook. We're selling our products in lots of different parts of the world. Therefore, functionality that only makes sense in one country or in one region and doesn't make sense somewhere else, that's not good business for us. And so we tend to introduce functionality that then starts to resonate with other parts of the world. And a brilliant example is the Field of Research Classification System, Australia and New Zealand classification system, that's incorporated in certainly where its origins are very clearly in Australia and New Zealand for assessment and review and evaluation, but it's been incorporated into our product. And so I now have North American clients. In fact, Jeff earlier said how he really liked the fact in the discovery module, the faculty have been classified. Well, they're being classified using a classification system from the other side of the world. So I think there is a lot of transference of not just features, but just ideas. The value of having a classification system that covers all research disciplines resonates with an international audience. And we've got lots of other examples where we might be being pushed, or there might be a national drive to capture data in a particular way, or do reporting in a particular way. So the Sustainable Development Goals, UN Sustainable Development Goals, being able to report on those, that makes sense to an international client base. So again, it's about introducing those types of features, functionality that resonate, but we can't expect to be pleasing everybody at the same time. But they tend to go, oh, we like that too. So that's what we're looking for.
That's true. I think it's the same. We see exactly the same, of course. And I mean, if I had to describe the process we use, I think, Jonathan, you'd be completely in agreement with it as well. But I think there are some places where we will do something that's specific to an area or to a region, and because there are sometimes those kinds of things. But to pick up on something that Julia had mentioned before as well, what it ends up with is that we build as generic as we can. We add some configuration options for specific scenarios or specific needs in areas that can lead to things becoming a bit more complicated, because you've got to keep an eye on all the configurations you need to add for your specific area. But what we do see, though, is that we have 12 user groups, and we see that if you're talking within the region, most often the region feels like their needs are really specific to themselves. But when you start to have these open group conversations across the different regions, so when we have our international conference, or we have user groups that are across the divide and is around a specific subject matter, so something like the award and funding processes, then you see that everyone actually has very similar needs, and that if we just kind of distill the essence of what they're saying, it's actually very similar in how we need to deal with the specific problematic. So it's really about listening very well and trying to understand what the actual problem is that everyone's trying to solve. And then you find often that what we're building is not necessarily different, but it's just about adding those nuances in there.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the same with Converus. I mean, we have a number of national user groups that do help us to kind of agree on what's important in the region. And it is funny that sometimes, what people think is unique is really not that unique, but sometimes it is. Like, for instance, there's a Canadian Common CV format. So, we did build that in as a standard output format. for our Canadian customers, right? So there are some national things that, because of government reporting and different things, are specific, right? But a lot of things can be made more general. But I'll just say that, when we look at Converus, our CRIS system, we try to make it as configurable as possible so that the clients can do a lot of this and they don't have to rely on us to, develop that type of functionality, or they can use our services team to configure it for them. And then just for Vivo, again, I don't know if Julia is back, but, Vivo is also similar in its, configurability, but in terms of balancing the global community, I mean, Vivo is very global in its users. Like we said, there's a big group in Germany, there's ones in Latin America, there's Spain and all over Canada, like French speaking Canada. So what's nice though, is because it's an open source community, everyone kind of drives where it goes. So it's a little bit different than developing a product, but everyone does get a say, and as much as they want, and also gets to participate in that development. So in that sense, I think those global needs definitely get reflected, and kind of what's most important bubbles to the top, because it's what people will commit time to work on. So if Julia comes back, she can maybe add a little bit more about Vivo too.
Okay, so I'll add my part. Bless you, David. Sorry. So I think that when looking at the requests from customers, there are two kinds of requests. There are very specific requests, maybe for a specific region or a specific customer, and the generic or general ones, where usually can fit to several customers. Of course, we try to generalize as much as we can the needs, and we try to give more priority to these needs. We have a process called Idea Exchange, where all of our users community can raise in a website. They can raise ideas and vote for those. So the ideas with most votes bubble up, and we can develop those. But also, because we're open, from time to time we work with some of our customers, and recently we had a case in Italy where one of our customers developed an interface which is a more generic one, and this development has been used by other customers in Italy as well for the same purposes. So the sharing between our customers is one of the values that we also value a lot.
Okay, Julia's trying to log back.
All our, I suspect I can represent everybody here. I mean, all of our institutional clients, or anyone looking to make use of an expert finder type tool, will understand that the software suppliers are resource constrained ultimately, and there is a case of prioritization. It's that balance, and engagement I think is really useful and vital for all of us, and being honest really about what's achievable, and then making a commitment and then sticking to it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I'd add one more thing there, and I think that's just about maybe kind of pointing or asking customers as well to kind of consider that when you release features that are supposedly for a market, that they don't switch off when you're talking about those things, because I think what happens often is within a region, people think, oh, well, that's not for us because it's for the Australian, New Zealand customers or something like that. And then they kind of switch off on those features. But if you just listen into those things, they're not usually very specific to the market, and it could be something you could be using as well. So like the example of the ANZ SRC codes, I mean, that's great. I mean, that it got used outside of Australia, New Zealand, because we do the same thing with the codes, but then, we've never actually considered using it anywhere else. So it's great if they do listen in and can actually use some of those features that they think maybe are not for them.
Okay, great, thank you. I did try to email Julia. She's obviously not able to log back on so far. I gave her my cell phone. We might put her on speaker if that's necessary. But let's move on to number 6. And how do you address the information gap between the sales period and implementation of a RIM system or expert finder systems? And how turnkey can these systems really be?
So I believe that essentially they can be turnkey with some configuration elements. We really pay a lot of attention, and we allow for configuration, like Anne said in Vivo. There are many configuration elements. So we try to have a standard off-the-shelf solution. Sporo is a cloud-based, so what one customer gets is everyone else gets. So we must have a very broad configuration areas. But indeed, when you talk with salespersons, they sometimes tend to sell the future, the vision. So we have a few processes around that to make sure that we bridge this gap. First of all, internal calls with the customer even before the deal is signed with our implementation team to make sure that we have all the details in place. We are keeping in touch with the buyers even after the project to make sure that the value that they purchased the product for it will be fulfilled by the implementation team and by the entire project team. These are essential to make sure that at the end of the day, the university or the institution will get the value that they purchased the product for. So a lot of communication, whether verbal communication, ongoing basis, in all level, whether by the project team or higher up, and using systems to track these, to track and communicate between ourselves.
I completely agree with you there. I actually, Jonathan, earlier you'd mentioned feeling old, and I feel old when I have these conversations because, in previous lives when I was a consultant doing implementation projects for IT products, then, we used to start off with this kind of, on the customer side, having a review of the process that we're actually tackling right now, and then, where the system is going to be used to help in the processing, and then understanding how whether things need to change, whether organization needs to change, what needs to be brought into place before we start bringing in a system. And we don't do those kind of things anymore, I think, because often what you see is people are just going in and saying, I need a system for this. And they start getting into an RFP and then they buy a product and they just want to get started. And when they get started, then they have this conversation about, well, where am I going to get data from? Where is the HR data coming from? Where is the organization data coming from? That kind of thing. And when you hit that question, that's actually where we see customers get stuck quite quickly, because now they do need to go have that conversation with another department and understand if they can get access to the HR data. And often what we find is that the organizational hierarchy is not available because, strangely, the official organizational hierarchy is not something that's really maintained in one place in many institutions. And so there's a quick conversation about, well, how do we put this together and where do we start to put this together and where do we maintain this? So there's lots of those kinds of issues that come up. And I think in general, I think we'd all agree that we do have systems that you can switch on and get started from day one, but it's that question of where do you get the data to get started from that starts to really become problematic. We do the same. We have implementation teams. We try to have conversations. We try to ensure we're in the tender process, that we have those conversations there already. But we also have some tooling and services that we put into place, and we're trying more and more to create more tooling as well to be able to, get a quick start. It might not be the highest quality because you're just going to pull stuff from whichever sources you have available, but at least you can start quickly and then move from there.
Yeah, I mean,
we've got Julia back. I just want to say that's great. And Julia, we're on question number 6. I'll just reread it quickly for you. How do you address the information gap between the sales period and the implementation, and how turnkey can these systems really be?
Yeah, I was just going to say, my thoughts are very similar to Davina. So, just to build off of that my advice to anyone, if they're embarking on any of these types of systems, is to really talk early and often, amongst yourselves and figure out what data do you want in it? Where does that data live? Who owns it at your institution? How quickly can you get to it? Because, these things, like you said, seem very obvious, but just getting like a faculty roster and some affiliation information is incredibly hard. I've seen, no offense, but, these things could really delay a project, right? So it's better, I think, to work on that amongst yourselves, up front, rather than, you sign a contract with one of us and then you start doing that. And then of course it's going to delay, so it really depends. Like my short answer to the question is it's going to depend, it could be a month, it could be 6 months. It could, there's always delays in terms of, unless you have everything ready to go, day one, when the contract's signed, there's going to be some delays in getting to the proper data, maybe even deciding on some of the workflows, because maybe you forgot that some department had to be consulted and now they want to be consulted and they're going to change kind of the requirements. So the more, I think, intra-institutional, consensus and discussion up front about what you're trying to do and how you're going to get to your own data is key to making these, go quickly and smoothly. So just say that, whether Vivo or Converus, I think doesn't matter. Same idea for us. We've seen it both ways.
Yeah, the question says how to address the information gap, and the information there is a little bit undefined, but for me, there is definitely the data issue, which other panelists have mentioned, and recognizing that right at the very beginning, but not so much so that it puts you off doing the project at all, because it's too scary, too daunting. I think the other information gap is really around expectation management, and that really is the responsibility of the institution and the project team. And I've been a project manager and a program manager at an institution, and you want your project funded, and you start building up what this magic silver bullet system is going to do, is going to solve all the problems. So you get your funding for your project, and I think that expectation management is really important. But I think that if I look at all of the implementations that we've done, the institutions that are most successful is where they've engaged with their scholars and their faculty as part of the procurement process, because they will reveal just how challenging the implementation of this type of solution is going to be to the project team. And they will also reveal what they expect from a system. And they will expect accurate data, not just any data or partial data. And so it's engaging early, getting the feel for what faculty will tolerate, what they see as value to the institution and to them, and then managing that process going forward. And then, yeah, we can all implement our system in a couple of days, dead easy. But no, I'm joking. It is hard, but expectation management and in consultation up front is how you address those challenges.
Well, I'll jump in if nobody else is ready to, and definitely, Jonathan, that's absolutely true. And I will say, in the open source world, there really is no information gap because there's no sales. We're not a vendor, and all the information about the documentation, user documentation, even the code can just be downloaded, and folks can try it out, which is often or usually the case. But, even though Vivo can be spun up in a week or so, again, as everyone else mentioned, the hard part is getting the right data cleaned up and integrated. And that's the same for all of our systems. And implementation is a lot more than just spinning up a system and filling it with accurate data, which is difficult on its own. But it's all about finding ways to make life easier for the users so that they'll actually use the system and appreciate it. And that was our struggle at Duke, and we really tried to give folks their own data back for different purposes, for websites and CVs and reporting systems, and so many things that would actually, help with some onerous process. So I think that's the big struggle here. One of the many big struggles with these systems. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We had a seventh question kind of lined up with things we're going to go really fast, but I'm looking at our Q&A, and we have some great questions lined up. So I think we'll actually skip our seventh question and move on to the Q&A. And as you'll notice, you've had an opportunity to look at the questions. Some of you have already upvoted some of the questions, so we'll probably just run down the list. And as I said, we have some time still, about 11 minutes before the session is going to end. But we will go through the questions. Whatever questions we don't get to, we'll have them, and we have identified who's there, so we can present these to the panelists to comment on if we can't get to it. But let's go ahead and just dive right into it. And we'll spend a few minutes on each question. Probably, again, not as long as we have for the prepared questions. But the first question from the audience is, what are some of the disciplinary considerations in terms of activities and data needed to represent them? Is there emerging consensus on what are the priority activities for humanities, arts, and social sciences, or performing arts, or other, non-STEM disciplines?
Well, I can take that because we certainly worked with the humanities at Duke, and I would say that there's very little consensus in the humanities about anything at all. But it is important to capture books and the different kinds of grants and fellowships that humanists do, as well as the performance data, all the kind of the artistic works and things that cross over the line between, a work of art, a performance, and research. And so we at Duke created an ontology for artistic works and some functionality for doing that. I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. It's on GitHub, so it's definitely shareable already, but it's a struggle.
I'd agree, and I would say, well, the two things that we pick up on the most in this subject area is language, because especially when it comes to social sciences, indeed, a lot of books get written, and they get written in the language of the researcher most often. And the second one is really that what we call the non-text content types. Indeed, it's the exhibitions and the performances and things like that, and kind of also adding them together in a hierarchy, because often it's an exhibition, but it goes to many different locations. It's a performance, but it's being done in different areas or different regions, and it all adds up. And then connecting back to things like press and media coverage, or places where it's being picked up and the impact of that. I think that's pretty difficult to pull all together, and so those are the areas I think that we're trying to also find ways of finding the content and pulling them together.
Yeah, and
it's not metrics is the answer to that question. don't focus on the metrics. The data sources aren't there. The outputs and performances are not tracked in the same way as traditional publication types. And I think we would also say, basically context, allowing social scientists, arts, humanities, faculty researchers to contextualize their work, not just what their contribution was, but, words around their activity. Words, images, it's not just raw metadata. I think, again, that doesn't quite sort of hook into people from those disciplines. They're looking for context and for their work to be better represented in systems like ours. And it's a challenge because that's actually a lot harder for us to automate the capture of that sort of information. It does need to come from probably from an individual themselves. So, but yeah, not metrics is the thing to focus on capturing.
Yeah, and I would add to that, and I agree with you both. Sorry, three of you. That also, you mentioned that maybe it's the context, but the metadata is quite different than the metadata. It's not really metadata. The terms are different. You don't call it research. You call it something else. So you need to. So the application itself needs to be very flexible. Also, in terms of understand to which discipline or what kind of entity we are presenting now, and also we need to support different viewers streaming and allowing for better discoverability of these kind of entities. Like, how do you find this work of art? How do you categorize it or catalog it? So yeah, I agree that this kind of thing is important. We really pay a lot of attention to increase the system from STEM to other disciplines. So I agree with my colleagues here.
Yeah, and our experience has been largely the same, so I won't repeat, but I will just say that I think it is important, especially if you're talking about a university, because there's all disciplines, to try to be inclusive, and to approach it that way, so people don't feel left out. And even if it means they have to input things manually, like we said, because there's just no data source for them, at least representing what they do is often enough, right? We talked about faculty engagement earlier. If you want people to care about these tools and actually use them, it has to represent them, right? So I think we cannot forget about, arts and humanities, social sciences. It's harder, but I think it's worth the effort. There might not be standards, there might not be metrics, but at least allowing them to represent themselves is really key.
Okay, thank you. Another interesting question that we've received. Of all the systems you have seen out in the wild or world, I presume, what is the one feature you would like to steal for your system, presumably from a competitor system?
I wouldn't steal it, but everybody loves the whooshing map on the Pure Portal homepage. It's pure demo bling, but every head of department, provost, head of a research office wants a whooshy map to demonstrate how international their research community is. So it was it's a nice visualization. I'm not sure it's that useful. It is interactive and you can click through, but just the impact of it, I think that's I've always looked at it and gone, why have we not got a whooshy map? Yeah, I wouldn't be stealing it, but I think these things excite people. It encourages them to pass on information, make sure that they're better and or accurately represented in the system. So visualizations, I think, are really, really key. And then visualizations require categorization, and so anything that automates categorization and where an individual can override the automation, I think that's really important. So yeah, I thought I'd give a shout out for the Pure team for their whooshing map. It's probably got a technical term, but that's how
I wouldn't know it, but thank you. And it is, of course, useful. I'd steal two things. I love the, on the Symplectic product, there is a way to just search across all sources, which we don't have at the moment. So I would steal that. I think that's useful because what you want as a user, I think, is to come in and just say, I'm looking for this, and I don't care where you find it, just find it for me, right? So that's a concept that I think is really great in terms of just simplifying the use case, simplifying how people work, and just being able to quickly get to something. So that I would do, and I'm pretty envious of Nadav's 1.6 billion and everything else that comes with it that's connected to the library systems. That sounds really interesting, actually, and all the automation you can build with that. So.
It does. We can build a lot with it, and actually, I agree again with all visuals. I'm a visualization freak, so I really love all the visualization. I love the ones in Pure that you can see these graphs, these network graphs. I don't know if this is the whooshy thing that you talked about, but I love it. And also actually in dimensions, I love a similar thing. I know it's not symplectic, but to create this kind of a network graph, I think it's great.
And I was thinking about visualizations too. I think, we're all kind of on the same page that whenever any of us see a cool visualization, we're like, we need that. So I think there's definitely room both in Converis and in Vivo to enhance visualizations to make the data more engaging and just bring it to life more, for sure.
The same thing. Visualization.
Yeah, visualizations and click through to detailed data that's accurate. I think if you can bring those two things together,
integrate, interactive.
Yeah, because a visualization that presents something in the aggregate and appears to tell you a story, but then when you look into the detail, it's all incomplete or wrong. Certainly, some people will like the visualization because it tells them something, that's enough. But our clients tend to want the accurate data underneath as well. Especially when they have to submit it for national assessment, internal reporting, accreditation. It's got to be accurate as well.
So this is a good segue to the next question. And looking at our time, this may have to be our last one, but we'll see how it goes. And it's about the idea of aggregating data. So the question I was asked was, our most recent data reuse cases focus on aggregating data in different ways. Does your data structure support things like network maps?
I mean, data structure, I'll just jump in, yes. I mean, Vivo, the core Vivo software has some network visualizations built in. So it's definitely designed for that. For Vivo, there are some additional visualizations that are possible, in terms of Converis as well. I mean, you always want your data to be structured well. And whenever we're using publication data, like our Web of Science data is very conducive to creating networks because it is so well structured and organized and for a long historical period too. So I would say short answer is, yes, but everyone else chime in.
Yeah, I think that a reliable and robust system, you must have a very robust data structure and data model, which can hold many-to-many relationship, which at the end of the day evolves into aggregate the ability to aggregate data. And yes, we have that, and I'm sure my other peers here have the same.
Yeah, I think the interesting question to the question is it a network map, as in a geographic map, i.e. whooshy map, or a network graph? And I think all our systems will have linked data that allows for graphing and creation of networks. I personally spent the weekend playing with a visualization of patent data, and I was trying to get different cities to light up to see where an institution was collaborating, like filing patents with partners, and the geolocation of the affiliation data wasn't complete enough, so I couldn't quite get the nice map that I was looking for. But certainly with a bit of extra effort, a bit of data curation, then that's possible. And yeah, network graphs are things that I suspect all of us will say, yes, we can produce those because it's linked data that we're capturing ultimately.
Yeah, and I was going to say what you just said as well. It's just about the quality of the data. The other thing I think is interesting on this conversation, just kind of going off topic a little bit, is actually where this should go to, right? I mean, the thing with the network graphs and things like that is not just understanding what you have right here in front of you, but also how that connects to other topics, other areas and stuff like that. And maybe that movement that we should be seeing towards being able to make those connections. When we talk about things like collaboration and stuff, it's not about just who have I been collaborating with, but how can I jump to the next graph? And what is the next graph that could be interesting for me and things like that. So I think that's probably an interesting thing to take away from that kind of conversation, is when you're bringing in that data and being able to work around with it in this graph kind of way. What are the next steps we want to take with those?
I mean, Griffin Web and the Profile RNS solution do really lovely visualizations, and it's because they've got the PubMed data as the data source, principally used by medical schools. Excellent graphing you can do there, and I think we then struggle when you have to rely on other data sources or multidisciplinary data sources. It's not as easy, but it's certainly an area that has a lot of interest. And I suspect a lot of us are all doing very, very similar things, and a lot of our institutional clients are doing independent work. There's the opportunity to collaborate there.
Right. So I'll just add that all Vivo data is structured to be linked to other data. So it is actually linked. All Vivo data is linked data, and again, it's two-way links. So you have the relationship between the two data elements, and it goes both ways. Whether or not it makes it more conducive to creating network maps, I think in some cases it does, but again, depends on the quality of the data and who's doing it. If you have Griffin Weber, then definitely you're going to make some great visualizations. Thank you.
Well, with that, if there's no one ask comments, I'm going to ask everyone if we can help join and thank our panelists. This has been a very lively discussion. It's been great getting some of your commentary on these things. For those that have asked questions, we'll make sure that our panelists see your questions, and if they can, maybe provide some commentary to that. But I'll now turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I want to thank the facilitators and presenters today for the very interesting and informative sessions. I know I learned a lot. Hope you did too. Just quickly, again, wanted to remind you that if you'd like to be part of the planning committee, to contact Amy Finley, going to the EFS website, and that you'll be getting that evaluation, and that's really critical for us to develop the next event, which would be next year, hopefully. So just wanted to say that this concludes the second Expert Finder Systems Forum, and looking forward to the third one next year. So thank you.